I came in and looked and saw the 2 metres by 4 metres and was already thinking of £100,000 and felt slightly sick. My name's Dan and I live here with my partner Tamar and our young daughter Elkie, and we've been here 3 years. Tamar works part-time, she works in genetic engineering, and I'm a biologist as well. I work in product safety for a multinational company, and our daughter goes to school about a 10-minute bike ride from here. It was our first real renovation with builders involved and architects. We're both quite handy, we do a lot of DIY, have done in the past. And I made the windowsills for the new part of the build out of my partner's late father's old desk that we couldn't really use but didn't want to get rid of. And then the drawers from the desk, I made them into these shelves. So I like making stuff, so we've got a utility room which is really important to us. And we've got all this space without having got rid of our utility room, which is the important thing because I never tidy it up. This was clearly not going to be something we did ourselves, so it was actually really nice to do it completely as a client and not get involved in anything, essentially. First time we realised how much money you can spend before you even break ground, because that was quite an education, actually. So when we moved into the property, it was a bit dated. It's a ground floor flat and it had been probably separated in the late 70s. The front half of the house is still, is kind of what we call the old wing. This end was probably the worst part, and it had a very small kitchen where the current kitchen is, and then a small kind of living room at the back. And it was quite kind of claustrophobic and the ceiling was low. The original idea was to knock through into a utility room, which turned out to be a supporting wall. And we thought, well, if we do that, we'll just end up having all our tools in the living room. So we weren't going to gain anything from that. So we thought we'll just make the kitchen and the lounge open plan. And that's when we got the builder. And then the builder looked at our side return garden and said, do you ever go in there? And we said no, because it's damp and a bit dark. And he said, well, then build into that. And then I started looking for an architect, and that's when I came across Resi, and that's when the whole process began. The work we got done has completely changed the way we live in the house, and the kitchen is in the same place as it was, and part of the lounge is in the same place as it was, but being open plan and with this bit coming round, play stuff for our daughter so we can all be in this area at the same time. She's not isolated down in the front room. It's maybe not everyone's cup of tea to have some of this stuff, but that's what you get with parenthood. But there's room to accommodate it. It's changed our view on how long we'll live here. Original plan was maybe buy a flat 5 years, do it up a bit, and then look at upscaling. But now we've done the work and we've been here 3 years, we're definitely not going to move in 2 years. So we've only really starting to start enjoy it, and we can definitely see ourselves living here for a lot longer because of the space, the way it's changed. A little bit into the build, I think when they got the foundations in, I came in and looked and saw the 2 metres by 4 metres and was already thinking of £100,000 and thought, that is a huge amount of money. I felt slightly sick, but calmed myself down and thought, come on, it's not just that, it's everything around it. And that's the way it's worked out. And so I think the budget we ended up about 120,000. So 1st of December on Friday, we went and got the tree and we spent the evening decorating it. And it was just a really lovely evening, just all busying around, putting up decorations that we'd been making in the previous few days. Cats were both sat on the bar stools, getting involved. On the weekend, if Tamar's away or she's just needs to rest up, my daughter and I are quite happy spending the day in the house in pyjamas doing crafts, and we can literally spend the day doing that. We really enjoy it. This is basically our domain, Elkie and I. She's here playing or watching TV at the weekend, resting and relaxing, and I'm in the kitchen cooking, and we don't need to basically move out of this part of the house. So she loves entertaining and having play dates at home and parties at home, and that's kind of what we want her to grow up feeling. We want it to be a place where she can feel safe, comfortable and express herself. If I was to give advice to people starting a similar sort of project, I would say don't overreach too much in terms of the additional space. We learnt about how much additional costs there are just through things like flooring or the heating, and obviously that's what leads to the kind of inflation in budget. So you've got to consider maybe 15-20% increase in budget over what you project. So if you really start out stretching yourself, that's going to get difficult because there are things that are unseen and it just inflates. And I'd also say live in the place for a while. Don't move in and immediately do it. I think you need to live in a place to know how it works, what works in terms of which rooms, how you use the place. Until you've done that, I think it's possible to make mistakes. That would be my main recommendation.